haiku. Superabundance, look closely, and even white explodes rich like pink. A few weeks ago, I went with my wife Kate and my daughter Sella to Yosemite. There were small patches of snow on the valley floor, but there was a lot of snow in the higher elevations. Looking up from the valley, the snow added a striking white outline to the cliffs. It was really interesting to go to Yosemite with a 14-month-old. When I wanted her to look at the spectacular waterfalls, she was more interested in playing with twigs on the ground. When I wanted to make sure she realized she was in a special place, she would amble about adorably, just like she would anywhere. For us folks older than toddler age, it's easy to feel awe in a place like Yosemite, or a place like this sanctuary, for that matter. But for toddler Sella, my daughter, it seems that everything around her is fascinating, that awe is everywhere. It's hard to describe what awe is. It's something like the experience of being rendered speechless by realizing that there's something huge and greater than yourself. In explaining Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel's theology, Rabbi Shai Held described awe as an awareness of the sheer contingency of being. That is a mouthful, and that is philosophical speak, but I think it's actually very helpful. The word contingency means something that doesn't have to be that way. Being overcome by the contingency of being means realizing that our existences don't have to be the way they are. Our lives are not given. It is amazing to be able to just amble about, whether that be playing with twigs or looking up at a waterfall. One of the great admirers of Yosemite was the naturalist John Muir. Muir wrote about the awe-inspiring big stuff at Yosemite, like cliffs and waterfalls. But interestingly, Muir also wrote about how amazing the flowers were in Yosemite. In fact, what makes John Muir's writing so remarkable is his ability to be awe-inspired by everything, big and small. In his book about his childhood in Wisconsin, he wrote about birds beautifully. He wrote, "Of all the great singers that sweeten Wisconsin, one of the best known and best loved is the brown thrush, strong and able without being familiar and easily seen and heard. Rosy purple evenings after thunder showers are the favorite song times, when the winds have died away and the steaming ground and the leaves and flowers fill the air with fragrance." The most important thing I want to say to you tonight is that we need beauty and awe in our lives, especially when things are difficult, especially when wars rage and we worry about the future. It's important to refill one's reserves with the simple amazingness of being alive. Our Torah portion this week, Vayakhel, has a lot to say about beauty and awe. It's perhaps one of those Torah portions that might seem to be written for a different time and might seem to be hard to be made relevant for today. We read in it a few verses about Shabbat, and then we get 3 chapters of detailed description and instruction about the Mishkan, the portable tent that the Israelites made while wandering in the desert that eventually brought God's presence to earth. Reading these long descriptions of the Mishkan, I wonder if whoever wrote this was enjoying describing the most amazing interior decorating of all time. It's as if whoever wrote this was riffing on beautiful construction and elaborate design. We read in great detail about the decorations. It says, "They made cloths of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. They made the cloths 11 in number. They made 50 copper claps to couple the tent together so that it might become one whole. And they made a covering of tanned ram skins for the tent, and a covering of dolphin skins above." Dolphin skins, I love that. The detail is painstaking, but the point comes across. Whoever wrote this was delighting in the beauty of the Mishkan. The practice of experiencing and appreciating beauty and awe is an essential part of our tradition. Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote famously that awe rather than faith is the cardinal attitude of the religious Jew. For Heschel, experiencing awe, being taken by the amazingness of simply existing, motivates us to engage in religious practice. Awe pushes us to Judaism. Heschel believed that the potential for awe and radical amazement surrounded us at all times if we just knew how to look for it. And yet, so much of our lives are not filled with awe. There's certainly moments of acute difficulty and the collective pain we all feel at things like the war in Israel and Gaza right now. Beyond this, much of our lives is spent in front of computers, looking at our cell phones, doing things like dishes and commuting, or just trying to get by. It does seem that Heschel is correct. There is the potential for awe, but so often our lives are difficult or tedious, and awe is not on our mind. This week, I came across a piece of wisdom that I think directly addresses this question of how to cultivate awe in your life. On the Ezra Klein podcast, the acclaimed writer Marilyn Robinson talked about how she schools her mind into paying attention. She said, "When I was in high school, I had a teacher who said to our class, 'You will have to live with your mind every day of your life. So make sure you have a mind that you want to live with.'" She was an English teacher, and she was telling us to find things that are beautiful, expose yourself to them at length, give them preferential attention. I don't think anyone ever told me anything that had a bigger impact on my life, she wrote. Even with the horrible backdrop of a war that many of us are very concerned about, even with the extent to which our everyday lives can be dull and repetitive, even now, in this very moment, we can cultivate a sense of awe. We can take steps to train ourselves to be more open to the simple amazingness of living. We can remind ourselves to take a breath and notice the small things, or even the big things. We can meditate. We can come to Shabbat services. We can write or draw the things that surround us. In the podcast with Marilyn Robinson, the interviewer Ezra Klein shared that he once considered tattooing one of the sentences from her books onto his body. The line that he considered tattooing is from Gilead. It says, "This is an interesting planet. It deserves all the attention you can give it." Despite the difficult times we find ourselves in, may we have moments to take in the beauty that surrounds us. Let's take the time to notice the amazing world we are in, whether it's through twigs, through waterfalls, or through this very sanctuary. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will.